Hello! Today we have some very simple hacks for your health that have really big results with Brandon from Hyperion Herbs. So you guys, I think, are going to be really excited to hear about this. And I'm also wanting to know in the comments what you're record. Put the comments of the questions of things that you want simple hacks to, whether it be stress or sleep or anything like that in the comments. Hi, welcome, Brandon.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Well,
I actually already got the best hack or tip from you just from scheduling this with you, where Brandon was like, I turn off my screen time 3 hours before I go to bed.
uh-huh.
And I was thinking, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that today as well.
It definitely
So
makes
this
a
is the
difference.
last, yeah, this is like the last moments that we get with you then before you turn your stuff off, yeah?
Oh, I mean, you know, just
So,
hear
oh,
the what? Oh,
oh,
can you
sorry, I
hear me
was getting
okay?
a little, yeah, I was getting a little bit of lag. It was breaking up for a second.
Oh, yeah, better now.
Okay, how, can you see me okay, or is it lagging?
No, you're good.
Okay, okay, this seems good. So I'm wondering if you'll tell me about that first, about, I know I've heard about the blue light and stuff, but how has
Sure.
that affected you by turning everything off so early?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's less about blue light and that kind of stuff, and just more so like how you're using your mind and your nervous system. Because
Mm,
if you're trying to like wind down and sleep, usually your mind is trying to go into just a really much different space. So, for example, when you're staring at your phone, you're very much like hyper focus on this tiny little thing, which then that tightens up your optic nerve, puts more blood and energy in your head, and kind of just puts you in a little more of a stressful state. It's pretty palpable. I mean, um, when you're actually relaxed and things drain out of your head, like hopefully people can know that sensation. Which I mean, actually maybe not, because I think a lot of people are on their phones and on devices. Like basically, like what I've realized is that most people exist in two extremes. They're either awake and they're sort of just like, oh my God, I'm awake, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, da, da, da. Or they're just completely zoned out and like, oh, I'm asleep. And there's really like nothing in between, right?
yeah.
So what I realized, after years of just being addicted to devices and all these things is that just over time it really made my sleep a lot worse. And I would go to bed at night and my mind would just be turning over and be doing all this stuff because my mind was used to whatever I was doing before, which was, watching a TV show or a movie, which it's like 5 seconds, new scene, 5 seconds, new scene,
Yeah.
crazy music, new scene. So it's just like doing this to your nervous system, or scrolling on the phone or whatever. And that's just really the opposite vibe, I think, for sleep. But I mean, also just general mental health. I think that's the opposite vibe that we want in our nervous system. So I just found out for myself if, a few hours or so, it's not a hard rule, but a few hours before I'm going to be going to bed, I just kind of cut out devices and I'm not on my phone. I'll go for a walk. I'll, maybe talk to a friend on the phone or something, or just do random stuff that doesn't involve staring at a screen and being like all in my head and all super stimulated. Um, and
Yeah.
I just think I've turned a lot of my friends onto that as well who had sleep issues, and it really made a big difference to them. Um,
I can feel it already just from the contrast of what you're talking about and trying to remember the last time that happened for me. And like I
right.
can feel the opposite of it, like writing something down or hurrying and posting something or like finishing that conversation or yeah, even watching movies right before bed, you can feel in your nervous system gets your mind on that track of like completing the conclusions and wondering what, especially if it's a stressful movie. Holy cow.
Yeah,
That seems
Exactly.
that seems so simple and also really hard at the same time. I think as soon as I try it tonight, I'm going to like really notice the addiction pattern.
Sure.
Like how many times do you think I'll reach for my phone before I go to bed? Before
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
try to put it away, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think, especially if you're someone like yourself or people that might be watching that are, interested in meditation or yoga or improving themselves or tapping into deeper parts of their nervous system, like these, these, I wouldn't say addictions, it's kind of a strong word, but this compulsion to always have stimulation is kind of the exact opposite of, I think, what yoga and meditation and all these other things are trying to accomplish, which is, so it's kind of like what I realized early on in my life is like, okay, if I meditate or something, maybe it's an hour a day, maybe it's 20 minutes, whatever. Okay, now I have 23 hours of the rest of my day. So is that going to support what I just invested time and energy doing, or is it just going to completely counteract it? You know what I mean? So
Definitely.
I think this is a really important thing for people to kind of start to get a hold on, and or at least develop awareness of, because that's always the first step.
Yeah, just start noticing because I do think it's common in my world to have learned that and tried that and maybe even have some success, especially with the listeners tonight
Mhm.
in the morning. Because I feel like I've heard that so long ago where you start that way and I will like avoid my phone like the plague until I've meditated in the morning.
Yeah.
But to add that connection to think about detoxing right before bed and how powerful that can be to complete the cycle and all the things, right? Like
Sure.
better sleep, better processing in your brain when you're asleep, is a whole nother thing that I want to try now because I don't know why I never have before.
And I think there's another benefit, which is your brain needs like downtime, it needs off time. Like especially if you're creative or you're that kind of person or you're doing things in your life, you need spaces where you're literally not doing anything. You're not putting more input in your system. Because for me, that's where I'll get a lot of ideas. That's where things, without me trying, I'll just be sitting on the couch staring at the wall, or I'll go for a walk, and then things in my brain will just kind of click and coalesce. So you really need that sort of some of that space. And then it's funny you mentioned the thing about the morning routine. Uh, I'm actually the opposite. Like as soon as I wake up, I'm ready to go. I start work usually within like 15, 20 minutes of waking up. And I usually get
Wow.
up at like, I'm usually up around like 6, maybe 7 at the latest. So it's like I'm up, I'm getting things done.
Oh,
So
that's
so
so
it's like kind of the
interesting.
opposite for me. But also like, I think the other thing that ties in with kind of the larger picture that I'm trying to paint here is organization. Um,
Hmm.
because if you stay actually organized in your day, then you know necessarily at the end of the day, you're going to have all this other crap that you feel like you have to kind of get in, like try to catch up on. And then same thing with the morning. It seems you don't have the sense to where your day is something you kind of have to like shield yourself against and like really get prepared for.
Yeah,
So I think,
yeah. I love that. That's a good point. It reminds me of Huberman's research, right? Where
sure,
he actually said, speaking of that optic nerve, and you know this, when you see those long rays of sunlight in the morning and at
right,
night, that does trigger, right, your bio clock.
for sure.
So that's a good point too. I'm so excited. I'm so excited that you agreed to do this because there are so many things that even when we're good at it,
Mm,
that we forget and we need reminders and
right,
the simpler it can be the better. And I know we've been talking about
sure.
not only practices but some herbs and things, and when I polled, the thing that came up the most was stress and anxiety. So I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share some of these things, like simple hacks for stress and anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for context, I existed almost exclusively in that state for many years of my life, so I'm very familiar with it. Um, and what I can share is things that made a pretty big difference, to where it's not really so much of a thing anymore, or if it is a thing, it's manageable. It's not, debilitating or overwhelming or destabilizing or whatever. I think I mean, I know it's boring and it's kind of a big subject. We don't really have to get into it too much, but being organized is absolutely like when I did that one thing, like my productivity went way up and the amount of hours that I worked went way down, and so many problems in my life just sort of like went away just from actually getting organized. So it's almost like, people look in their closet and it's like, okay, here's my winter clothes go here, my summer clothes go here. Like they have these like kind of basic whatever categories. So you just look at your daily life, your daily routine, and what you typically do, and then you just kind of categorize and start putting things in boxes and organizing it so you're not just always pulled in a bunch of different directions. So if you're like, okay, I'm gonna do email, you sit down and do emails. Or, okay, I need to, whatever, run errands. You run your errands around a similar time, roughly speaking, every day. And you just kind of start organizing and categorizing things. And then people, I think, will be blown away at how much stress and anxiety and stuff will just go away automatically because you're not so like reactive all the time. Especially that combined with the basic sleep stuff, I think can do a lot. Um,
Did you say the basil leaves?
no, I said the basic stuff that we were saying about sleep.
Oh,
Uh,
the basic stuff about sleep.
yeah,
I'm sorry, it
yeah,
glitched out right then. I
yeah,
wanted to hear it because it sounded like important information.
for sure.
Yeah, the basic stuff about sleep. And
Yeah,
also, like, what do you think? Was it difficult for you when you first did this? And maybe I'm asking for the mommies who have joined
yeah,
to wait until that organizational box comes up to address it. Like if you said you're going to do emails from 1 to 2 before you pick up the kids, was
right.
it difficult to not have time earlier and think, well, I can get this done? And then all of the stuff starts piling on. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I think there's obviously ideals and then there's real life, you know. There's always unpredictables, and especially if you're in a family with a lot of moving pieces and you're responsible for a lot of other people, that's kind of a different situation than myself, which is like solo entrepreneur, and I'm kind of like discipline is very, very easy for me. Like I don't, that's not that difficult. It never has been. I'm just wired that way for whatever reason, for better or worse. But for some people, it's a little more challenging. So at the end of the day, it's you try to understand the idea, the concept, and then start to apply it in your life however you can, and then just make the best of it and kind of make it your own thing. Because there's not really a one size fits all thing. But in terms of like kind of herbal stuff or simple stuff we can consume, I would say one of the first things is changing out our salt intake, because like our adrenals and our kidneys, among a bunch of other functions in our body, need really high quality salt. Obviously, adrenals, stress response, fight or flight, all that stuff. So things like Celtic sea salt, pink Himalayan salt, or Redmond sea salt would be the ways to go. And then any like iodized processed salt, you just kind of want to avoid that as much as possible because it's kind of like, I don't know, the coke basically. Like it's they just isolate out sodium chloride and then remove all the other trace minerals. So of course, when you just take pure sodium chloride, it doesn't have that great of effects on the body. Versus if you actually take sodium chloride with all of the other trace minerals that come in it naturally, it's a completely different thing. Same thing with like sugar, like coconut sugar is not really that bad. Even just like cane sugar a little bit isn't that bad. Fresh sugar cane juice isn't really that bad. But then you isolate it down and refine it down, and then you refine out fructose and glucose and sucrose and all the little things. Now you're basically talking about a drug, and of course, when you take that, the body's like, oh, I don't know what's going on. So definitely, just making that small, simple change with getting a higher quality salt is a great thing. People can also first thing in the morning when they wake up, drink a lot of water. Um, something like this is like a 24-ounce bottle. Like for me, that was one of the first health things that I ever did that made a massive difference. Like keeping so that when I wake up in the morning, I actually feel clear and energized. I'm not all like foggy and out to lunch or whatever. So wake up first thing in the morning, hit the water, rehydrate, and you can put a sprinkle of, a high quality salt in that, and that will really help with hydration and kind of waking people up, but also kind of getting things moving in the morning, meaning like flushing out your bowels, flushing out your bladder, and kind of helping you just feel more refreshed. And then you do that over a period of time, your body starts to adapt to that pattern, which is,
Mm.
I would say, a good thing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I love that because what do we normally reach for? It's like the sugary juice or like the coffee or something. And in your mind, is there an hierarchy on that salt? Like is Redmond or Celtic Sea salt or pink Himalayan salt, or did any of those have more trace minerals than the others?
It's all good. I mean,
Okay.
sure we could, I'm sure we could take it to like a minute amount and analyze it, but I don't know. There's bigger problems in the world, I think.
Okay.
I mean,
I
that's not
think
really,
when you go to the store,
yeah,
you're like, which one do I pick? It's all about the packaging for me.
yeah.
So I
I
have
think,
pink Himalayan salt, and I was wondering if I'm good. Like I'm
yes,
good with that.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, basically, as long as you're doing your best to avoid the iodized, like highly refined processed stuff, like it's all good. Don't spend too much mental energy on it. Um,
I love that one. Okay, so what about, because I feel like you're right with even just attempting one or two of these
yeah,
things, you feel a difference pretty quickly. But the fatigue is something that is difficult, I think, for a lot of people to rid themselves of as the
right,
whole day goes on.
right.
So I want to talk about that one.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit, but I think holy basil, or Tulsi, as it's
Hmm.
called, is a really cheap, easy thing that people can access. Anyone can go to Whole Foods or whatever local health food store, and they'll have it in tea bags. It's like $5 a box.
Hmm.
You can just start drinking that a few times a day.
Yeah, and you
Rewire.
don't get like the caffeine rush from it either. When I was
No,
drinking it, I didn't feel like immediately awake, but maybe more like a sustainable, like I don't have to take a nap. I can keep going.
yeah, I mean it lowers your cortisol. So,
Mm.
because my thing is like I recommend people relaxing and de-stressing as the best way to have more energy. Um, because I mean, yeah, I could tell you 25 different herbs and supplements you could take that will give you a high, they'll give you a boost, they'll give you some stimulation. But the reality is eventually they will stop working. Eventually you'll adapt to it. Eventually you'll still be in the same situation. So it's like I think it's a more sustainable route to lower stress, lower your stress level, lower your stimulation, and then you naturally have more energy. And especially if you're doing the other things like maybe improving your sleep and whatever other stuff we talk about, things can kind of equalize and recalibrate over time. Um, because I think also too, what a lot of people associate as having energy is literally being stressed. That's what I was saying earlier. Like people exist on like two extremes. I'm either really tired and I need to sleep, or I'm awake and I'm energized and I'm ready to perform. It's like that's just two extremes of your nervous system, and that's not a great way to live. It's not very sustainable. It's going to create probably disease and inflammation over the long term. So if we can kind of work our way and try to find something more in the middle, um, to where we just kind of feel calm and okay, then that's obviously the sweet spot. Kind of, because if we're talking about holistic health, we're talking about long-term solutions and trying to help people. Like that's, I think, really where we want to be going.
Yeah, for the most hours in the day, the regulated nervous system. And if you have to spike or you have to rest, that's okay. But the
Sure.
majority should be a regulated state, which I want that. I don't think there's anybody on here that would hear that and say, no, actually, I need that. Well, maybe I need to hyper perform at this level for 12 hours a day. And then,
Sure.
but you are going to get long term effects. And I don't think there's anybody on here that didn't identify with you when you said you spent a lot of time in that
For sure.
space. I think we all have done that in our lives, and maybe it was justifiable, but also what is the best hack for adrenal fatigue? Because it's really difficult, I think, to come back from that. And maybe it is that slow, gradual path, but I wonder if you have any
Yeah.
tips on that.
I mean, to be, yeah, think everything I've said so far is like kind of, I mean, I know it's not like put a patch on it and it's
Right.
better, but adrenal fatigue is not something like that. It's something that actually does take a while for the body to, and a lot of it, basically what adrenal fatigue comes down to is your system is never able to shut off. It's just even
Mm-hmm.
if you do sleep, your system's still like just like buzzing, so you can never actually dial down.
Mm-hmm.
So then your adrenals are just always overworked. So these simple things that I've been talking about so far can obviously really help, especially something like holy basil, to actually lower your cortisol and train your body to not function in that state anymore. Um, and then also too, if people really need like something pretty aggressive, like a real sedative, I think, everyone's heard of Epsom salt baths, right? But I think from what I've seen, basically everyone that I've ever met has been not doing it correctly, in my opinion. They're like, oh, I took a salt bath, I put a cup in there. I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. It's like, have you tried an entire bag or like 2 bags or 3 bags? Try that.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
So you're
obviously,
like
like,
floating in there. You're like,
well, I
you
mean,
basically
yeah,
want to be like floating in there.
if you can, yeah. But yeah, if you're gonna be like dosing that many salts, you want to go. But also Epsom salts are cheap. You get a huge bulk bag on them for like for very little. You're potent. It's for like a couple bucks, if even that. I don't even remember. Which is funny to me, just as a caveat. I say things like use 1 or 2 bags of salt, and people are like, "Oh my God, that sounds crazy." But yet people will go out and drop like $15 on a glass of wine, or like the most trivial sort of least long-term beneficial things people will not even blink an eye for spending money on. But then when it comes to making a slight modicum trivial investment or adjustment to their health, they're like, oh, I don't know, that sounds extreme. It's like, oh, okay. So
True.
I'm just
I
saying,
can validate that.
yeah, I'm just saying that's something I have seen a lot from working with people in the health field for I don't know 20 years or whatever, and seeing it in myself. Um, People are happy to go to extremes to maintain their level of dysfunction and stress, but they're not willing to like go to any type of effort or extreme to sort of go where they want to go, which is like more health, more balance, more whatever. So that's just human nature. I don't have that one figured out yet. That's just
But it's worth
that's just something,
it. And I'm glad you pointed it out because if you can just
right?
point it out and how many times have you spent $15 this week on something that was not lasting and you don't still have today and you maybe can't remember. So go spend that on Epsom salts. And I'm glad you also validated that because every time I
Sure.
take a bath yoga and my muscles are really sore, I want to put that whole bag in there. And and I don't know why. And when, I soak my horse's ankles when they're sore, you put the whole bag in there,
For
and then
sure.
their hoof goes in the butt. And it's like, yeah, that makes so much sense. And maybe we'll feel so much better if we do it that way. So I think these are all hacks that people want, can easily do, don't hardly cost any money. And
Exactly.
it's the reminder from Brandon to be like, do this. You're already spending the money on it. I mean, I bought a keychain for $15 the other day that I didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, would you pay $15 to have the best night's sleep that you've had in years? I would. Like, I mean, is that's a
I've,
no-brainer.
I've spent more than that on yoga nidra meditations from people that I wanted to listen to, right? Or an NLP course to do my, to listen to that when I go to sleep. So
Yeah,
I love that every time I talk to you, you just bring so many concepts back to something that is reachable
right.
and simple and
Hmm.
just kind of like, you can all do this. Like,
Right.
let's just remember. Yeah.
Sure.
I love that. All right. What else? Do you have anything else in your mind that you feel like we really need to know?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would a lot about really this whole thing about the time. Um, and to make this more practical, I'll share something that will sound weird to people, but I just to have more mindfulness, probably get rid of, probably get rid of a lot of anxiety, because that's why people don't often indigestion. People have crazy dreams. They think it's like a profound thing. Oftentimes, it's literally just indigestion or whatever in their life. Oh, it's a significant meaning. No, it means like so. It comes back to like these really simple things. Um, and I'm seeing in the chat that I'm buffering or something.
Yeah, I was seeing if it was coming through on them because I was hearing the simpleness about the mindfulness for the anxiety and the things like that. And I wonder if you'd be willing
Yeah,
to
yeah, I can
repeat.
repeat it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
you're clear to me.
yeah, that's weird. I'm not sure exactly why, because my Wi-Fi is quite good, but Instagram just sucks for me lately. Like when I initially tried to get on,
Yeah.
it was just like, can't refresh feed. And I'm like, dude, um, so whatever.
Knowledge gods just are picky. And I feel like we'll do this again with Brendan. Oh, they're saying it's clear now. And
Yeah,
I love it so much to
for
just
sure.
do
Yeah, I
like,
could do,
or I visit Oregon all the time. We should just sit down and have a podcast
yeah,
because you have
definitely.
subjects too.
Yeah, so I can definitely repeat that whole thing. It's no problem.
Okay.
Basically, I'll share something that I think will initially sound weird to people and foreign, but it's something that will definitely improve sleep, definitely improve digestion, easily decrease anxiety and indigestion, and allow people to actually be more mindful and generally a bit more human, dare I say. Um, and it ties back to what I was saying earlier about our compulsion to be constantly stimulated, right? Um, so basically, the hack and the tip is whenever you eat a meal, just eat the meal. Don't look at your phone. Don't read a book. Literally just sit there and eat your food. And if you have people around, like, I don't know, talk to them, connect with them, share a meal, and literally give yourself space to eat and enjoy your food without something just jamming in your face. Because that causes a lot of indigestion. That messes with people's whole system. Because basically, just on a simple mechanical level, I mean, we all know the extreme of this. You eat a really big meal and you feel sleepy. Typically, that's because the blood left your head and went to your gut. So when you're really mentally stimulated and looking at something and being visually stimulated, that means the blood's up here. And let's say you live the vast majority of your life up here, that means there's less blood down here in your gut. Oh, you have anxiety. Oh, you have indigestion. Oh, you have food allergies. Oh, you have autoimmune conditions. Oh, you have insomnia. Hmm, might it be related? Because a lot of times the underlying cause of a lot of those issues is literally just indigestion, like insomnia, people waking up in the middle of the night, people having crazy dreams, indigestion, people having anxiety, it's literally just indigestion. Like the amount of nerves and the innervation in our gut and how that affects our neurology, it's so much more simple and mechanical and physiological than people think. And just making that one change alone, I can almost guarantee for a lot of people will massively improve so many other things throughout the course of their life. And especially if you're like a yoga person or a meditation person or someone who's interested in mindfulness, why in the world would you waste your life eating food while just staring at whatever screen or being stimulated or whatever? You're disrespecting the person that grew it, the person that prepared it. You're disrespecting the planet and the whole system that produced this nourishment for your body. You're like, nah, I got more important things to do. And you're just shoveling this thing in like some kind of animal. Like, yeah, literally all outside distractions. Like, just literally eat food. That's it. Just do that. And then give yourself space after to just kind of like chill and just sit there like a human who just ate food. That, this thing we allegedly need for nourishment, just give yourself that space. And I can guarantee you that will help a lot of things. I've had friends that have got on board with that, who used to have really bad acid reflux and indigestion, pretty much went away just from that one change. And then, but the thing is like now they get it. Now they're converted because they used to hang out with me and we would go out to eat. And I'm looking around and I'm like, dude, these people are out here allegedly at a social activity, spending all this money, but everyone's on their phone. No one's even talking to each other. No one's even connecting. No one's even literally in this room. Everyone's like checked out on all these different things. So I'm just kind of like, what world, what planet did I get dropped in? You know what I mean? Um, so
I,
it's just like,
I know I
so the,
like to play that game sometimes just for
yeah,
fun. I like go sit at my kid's activity, or like you said, you're waiting for your food somewhere and just put your phone down, start looking around and see how long you can last, but also noticing
sure,
how lone you are in that, and it's really uncomfortable and awkward. And I, like I said again, I love how simple you're making it.
right,
It's like, don't believe, try it, right? Like
for
just do
sure,
it. I'm telling you, all of these symptoms will go away. But also in my mind, I'm thinking of all the complex connections which you're mentioning too, which is like your enteric nervous system. How powerful is
exactly,
that? To be mindful, like we're like, oh, be mindful when you're talking to someone, be mindful when you're doing your practice, be mindful, right? But to be mindful when you're eating is such powerful respect for the energy exchange and the movement, and it's signaling your enteric nervous system, which is affecting your brain. And it's also a really great practice in non-reactivity. Like I've noticed, I've been cleaning up my diet because I'm on a dieta right now.
mm,
And one thing that's really powerful I've noticed for me is to be able to take a deep breath when I think I have to look at something or eat something quickly.
right,
And I pause and do this simple practice that you're offering.
sure,
Noticed, and I'm not very great at it, and I'm practicing it, and also mostly in awe of noticing how good I thought I was at mindfulness, and that this is an area
sure,
that really stands to have a lot of need for improvement. That is, I don't actually reach for the foods that I normally would, or I would eat them differently, or I would interact with them differently. And it is a really powerful way to take all of that back. And in all of
right,
the processes, you're affecting your anxiety, right? You're affecting your physiological
sure,
system, your brain. And so it is purposeful to like simplify it and just say, like a human would, just eat their food.
right,
Do that. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And I'm in the middle of feeling that like
sure,
experientially right now with this dieta. And I'm like, holy cow, how is it like that I have been putting these things in my body not mindfully? And what are they doing?
right,
You can feel that. Like you can feel it when you suggested that tea to me. And I was mindful about it,
mm,
the energy that it carried and like what it did to my body and my mind, as opposed to like just shoving things in my mouth or doing them while I'm hurrying getting my emails answered or
right,
whatever. Yeah, it's really cool.
yeah.
And that everyone
I mean,
on their phone. Yeah.
most of the stuff that I've been saying so far is almost kind of a choose your own adventure sort of thing, where it's like you can do it, and it seems really simple and kind of dumb, but if you actually do it, there's a transformational kind of personal growth element to it, whereby you actually start to learn from your own experience, and then that changes things around. And to me, that's a lot more powerful than someone just telling you what to do or you just doing something because it's someone said it was good for you. You know what I mean? But especially with food, because that's like such a major thing for people. And at least for me, for most of my life, I just emotionally ate. And even, over the last few years, I've really experimented with eating a lot less. Like, because I just really questioned how much do I actually need versus how much am I just needing to feel full or trying to get some sort of thing. Um, so whereas now, like, I don't know, I don't really get any type of emotional thing from food anymore. Like I
Mm.
could eat, I've done experiments. I went years without eating any sweets, like literally nothing, no sugar, nothing,
And what
and
happened?
that was uh, nothing. It was just didn't eat it. I was just kind of like because basically I did that for a while, and then I lost all of the emotional connection to it. So when I ate it, I would actually just taste it, and I'd be like, ugh. And for most American sweets, they're just aggressively too sugary. So I was just kind of like, this is disgusting, and I just naturally had no appetite for it. And then recently I did another experiment where I was like, I'm gonna eat sweets every day. I'm gonna eat cookies every day for like a month or two,
Oh
see
my
what happens. Um, so then I did, and then I was like, yeah, nothing. Like I don't feel anything. And then I don't really, yeah, I just stopped because I was like, it's like not that, not am I getting anything from it, which is a huge cry because for the vast majority of my life, I would have to eat like a huge bowl of ice cream every day, and have to eat all this sweets all the time for like my childhood and my teenage years. So like I just this is why I'm saying so many different things is because no one told me those things. I just did the experiment, observed how I responded, and then just followed that experiment. And then I learned, oh, I was eating all this stuff because I just was emotionally whatever, and I actually don't even really need it. And I think this ties into everything we've been saying about, I have been saying people exist on two extremes of their nervous system. Like I'm either super tired and I need to go to sleep, or I'm kind of buzzed and I'm all stressed. So whether it's food or sleep or relationships or whatever, what I realize is that a lot of the time we are reactive and showing up in just that sort of, in that kind of extreme way, either one side or the other. And in the same way that I think people eat and consume things that maybe don't really even need or really even want or like, I think people, myself included, make life decisions from the same place. So where that becomes important is if you're getting into a relationship from that place, it might not work out that well. You're choosing your career from that place, might not be that fulfilling. And then what's going to be the side effect of a dysfunctional relationship? Stress, anxiety, indigestion. I can't sleep. I have body pain. I have body aches. What's going to be the side effect of having a career that you really don't like and is really grinding you down? All of those negative things. Then what's going to happen? Oh, I feel like crap. I need to take all these drugs. I need to take all these supplements. I need to drink alcohol. I need to do all these coping mechanisms. So the whole thing kind of comes full circle to like when you actually start to recalibrate some of these basic things and start to have some degree of more balance in your nervous system, because it's always a work in progress, then actually a lot of things start to come into focus, and then you can make decisions from that place, which then kind of is actually holistic because you've actually addressed the root cause and looked at your life as a whole and removed the inflammatory causes for the things. So then you naturally feel better. So then your life naturally supports feeling better. And that's a whole different kind of cycle. So hopefully that makes sense. It's a bit of a tangent, but long story short, stop looking at your phone when you eat your meals.
And 3 hours before bed. No, it's a beautiful canvas. I think it's kind of what circles back and sums everything up. And I just heard
Sure.
Brenna Brown put some new research out,
Mm.
reframing the context of midlife crisis. And I think I have to admit I'm there in that category of age
Sure.
where
Sure.
I'm like that demographic she's talking about, right? I won't speak for you. But she was saying that it's the repairage of some of these things and realizing some of this and like I mean she's talking more emotional terms of taking off the armor,
Yeah.
but with what you're talking about, how many times do you see people experience that? We're not just talking about on the physical level, but what you said is it is affecting the underlying emotional level and dysfunction in relationships and relationship to work and stuff. And so even when you start doing this at any point in life, how many
Mhm.
times do you see people maybe do need to change a career path or a relationship status, right? Or how they're relating to different relationships in their life. It seems like one goes with the other, don't you think?
Yeah, I think for me, I can speak for myself that I realized at a certain point that the vast majority of the conflict, stress, and discomfort that I'd experienced in my life, I caused. So once I realized that, I was like, ah, damn.
Yeah.
That's that
Yeah.
one. That was like kind of like tragic humor. But on the bright side, I could like, okay, well, I can just not do those things anymore. Cool. I don't have to repeat that. Great. And I think honestly, for a lot of people that I've met, the same exact thing is true. And I think a lot of times we know what to do. We might know this thing's bad, or we know this whatever it is not great, and maybe we should make a change. Somewhere we kind of know it, but we're looking for all these other reasons and justifications and coping mechanisms and things, which in my opinion is kind of like procrastination. Like for example, after being in like the self-development, personal development field and all these things for many years, I realized that a lot of it was literally just procrastination. Like people, we know what we need to do. At least we know something we should do to at least get started. Maybe it's not the big piece of the puzzle, but it's at least a piece, and we know it. It's somewhere in our gut or in our heart, like we know the thing, but we're just looking for, well, let me check the research. Well, what does this person say? Well, what does that person say? Well, then we go on this whole like journey, when in reality it just comes back to something very simple. Um, a lot of it just comes back to like removing these inflammatory markers from our life, whether it's, how we're showing up in a relationship, how we're responding to a situation or that person or the job or whatever that is. I mean, that's for each person to kind of, decide for themselves, of course. But at least for me personally, these are all things that have been incredibly useful and very, very helpful for me.
Yeah.
And I think also what you were saying earlier about the midlife crisis, I think that's, I mean, I have like kind of a rough theory about that, which is just kind of the hormonal changes that men and women go through around sort of midlife. Because like at least for me, I can speak as a man, like I feel like when I was like had a lot more testosterone, was really loaded up in my, early 20s, there's a lot of stuff I could deal with, a lot of stuff that I wanted to do and how I behaved in relationships I could tolerate. Now that I'm older, I'm just like, maybe it's the hormones, maybe I'm older and wiser or lazier, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I just have no energy for that anymore. Like I just don't, because it's not really, a sustainable thing. So hopefully we should be getting a little older and wiser and a little more, judicious and efficient with our
Yeah.
energy.
And we have to. And I think that's kind of what Brenna Brown's research was saying, is your intuition is right on. And I always think our intuition should go hand in hand with the research, which was that there comes a point where she says the universe, she grabs you by the shoulders and is like, shit's getting real. Like you got to make a choice now.
Yeah.
Like maybe we're able to sustain this for this period of your life, but at this point it's time to make a more intentional change. Or like you said earlier, that I wanted to double click on,
Mhm.
that is where we start seeing the dis-ease, right? And the
Yeah.
fatigue, the gut health issues, and the things that people start asking you about on your videos and on your YouTube,
Hmm.
about those things. And it's like, that's because that's now catalyzed as a problem now, right? Where I think you can get away with it for quite a while.
Yeah.
So the memory for it to just be so very simple, to just take a minute, take an Epsom salt bath, drink the Tulsi tea, like detoxify yourself from the screen time, organize. I love this bit you've been talking about and keep circling back to about organizing your time in your life is a way to be intentional and mindful about the tasks you're going to participate in. And it feels so good. Like it's very simple and appropriate advice, and also kind of astounding how much we can't do it. Like you just say, we're procrastinating or we're just
Yeah.
waiting for the pain high enough to say, I really am going to put my phone down. I mean, that's kind of what I was waiting for too when you suggested this um connection be at this time because you're going to put
Uh,
your phone for this. I was like, oh, I need to do that. I've said that 100 times, but
yeah,
I really appreciate your time, and I really
for sure.
appreciate the self-research that you've done to be able to give us this stuff and your willingness to show up and keep talking about it. in truth and in simplicity for us is so powerful. It's like my favorite conversations to have. And I'm wondering if there's any last things on your heart, like just tips or like sharings that you feel like we should have.
Yeah, I think there's a concept where if you organize your life, it kind of helps to organize your mind. Like
Mm,
those things go hand in hand. So if you're trying to meditate or be mindful or do all these other things, and your external world is cluttered and disorganized and chaotic, just forget it. Like, because as soon as you sit down and put your attention inwards, you're either A, going to be confronted with all of your chaos and all of your discomfort and all of your disorganization, or B, you're just going to check out and disassociate and get lost in some whatever flight of fancy, some sensation, some memory, some thoughts, some emotions, and whatever. And then that's going to be a whole thing, neither of which are actually developing the quality that we would probably want to develop in terms of doing any kind of introspective sitting kind of practice. So that's kind of where the rubber hits the road on that. But at the same time, it's like, it's not my idea. If you look at the basic teachings of like pretty much any tradition, it's always like morality and ethics, meaning like get your shit together, like sort your life out. If you can't actually sort your life out and do these basic things, like forget about everything else afterwards, because it's just not going to be, it's not even, the door's not even open. Because like I said, you're going to go inside and it's either A, chaos, pain, fire, destruction, which that's a little less likely, is more so just going to be distraction, disassociation, sensation, memory, emotion, whatever. And that's just like a whole other thing. So all the stuff that I'm saying seems kind of mundane and basic, but for people who are actually crazy enough to apply it and actually look at it and see how it affects them, there's a lot in there. Um, which leads me to kind of my last point, which is made me think of it. You were talking earlier about, you know, midlife crisis, reevaluating things, and then the universe, eventually just kind of hitting you upside the head and being like, hey, you might want to check this out. Um, and so, I've been making YouTube videos since 2009, I guess, right? And the first however many years, it was just all like herbs and supplements and whatever. And I own an herb and supplement company. But yet I haven't really made much video or content about herbs and supplements in like a really long time. And people were like, why? Why are you talking about relationships? Why are you talking about politics? Why are you talking about mindset? Why are you talking about psychology? And why I'm doing that is because at a certain point, that's what's making people sick. So sure, I'll sell you products till the end of time, gladly. But ethically speaking, I would like for you to actually get better and maybe remove the cause of the problem in the first place. That would be great. So that's kind of why these other things are appropriate. So, I mean, like, I can't tell you the amount of like really health conscious, really progressive minded, people that I've met, right? That are like, when it comes to politics, extremely angry, extremely reactive, highly like opinionated, and like just have this really sharp, aggressive kind of mindset. And I'm like, okay, that's making you very sick. Absolutely guaranteed. That emotional toxicity is completely negating and polluting all the other good things that you're saying you're doing for yourself. And the same thing could go for a relationship or whatever. Like it doesn't. So that's kind of why I've talked about those things, and also given people maybe more how to think, what questions to ask, and and less of here's what to think, here's what to do, here's what you should do, which I think sometimes is maybe more so what people want, which I get it, but also too, like, I respect everyone as an adult. I assume everyone is intelligent and cognizant and like an autonomous, independent individual. So I give them that respect and that assumption so that I talk to them as such and say, like, here's the information. I think you can, figure this out to some degree for yourself. If not, like I'm here to help. But I think that's more, in my opinion, kinder, more respectful and more effective than just telling people what to think, what to do, what to believe, and all these kinds of things. So those are just a couple of last points that I wanted to add in because these different things were kind of popped up as what you were saying earlier.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's super relevant. And
For sure.
then people who haven't joined, I saw some of my friends on here that maybe don't know about your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tag this and we'll repost it on the podcast and on YouTube and tag you. But Brandon's Hyperion Herbs TV, and also on Instagram, and also all the content you put out, I will tag. But providing information is huge. Yes. And I love that. And I love your approach. I identify with it. And I identify with that because they want to make the choices, but they just want the tools and the support to even sometimes be told,
Yeah.
here's the education and you are sovereign and you can make the decision. And I truly believe in the goodness of people too, and that the best out with that approach. I really appreciate you giving respect to me and your viewers and that. So thank you so much, Brandon.
Yeah, I think it goes back to video I put out on Instagram, I don't know, a month ago or 2 months ago, and then I originally put it on YouTube like, I don't know, 8 years ago or something, where I said that if we simplify what people are wanting from self-help and spirituality, comes down to one or three things. A feeling of you are okay, it's going to be okay, and you can do it. Emotionally speaking, that's really what I think drives people and what people are looking for in terms of wanting content. Because sometimes it is as simple as someone saying like, "Oh yeah, you can do it, and you should do this," and they're like, "Oh, the person said I can do it, so maybe I can." Even if it's as literal as like drink spring water instead of tap water, or like simple things like that. So I mean, I get it on an emotional level, and I think ultimately those three things are what drives people.
Yeah.
Um, and just as humans, we have like value, power, and safety are our core emotional needs. So yeah, hopefully people can walk away from this realizing that they can do it. I've been through a ton of terrible things and I'm still here. I know people have been through worse and they're in even better places. So all the stuff that I've said is absolutely within the realm of possibility and is absolutely something anyone can do. So I would encourage anyone listening to absolutely, pick one or two of these things and just try it and do it. And that's the best thing you can do is pick one thing and do it and then start there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. All right, we're going off of our time. I'm going
Cool.
to edit this and post it now, and then we're going to go off of our electronics. And I encourage you guys to do that too, especially if you're on Eastern Mountain or Pacific time. We're already past the limit, right?
I mean, you use your own common sense.
Yeah,
Don't be a maniac about it, but just try it out, give yourself an experiment and see how your body feels.
I love that. Well, until next time, I'll see you. Thank you so much again.
All right, sounds great. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.